welcome back to my channel. So today we're going to take a look at the Transformers Legacy Wave 3 Voyager class Predacon Inferno. Let's start off by taking a look at the packaging, and then we will get into the review. So of course up front we have Transformers on the side, the Legacy logo, a nice artwork shot of him in his ant mode with the really cool flamethrower. We have Predacon Inferno with the really cool Predacon symbol. We do have a nice open window displaying Inferno in the packaging, and of course on the side we do have two really nice artwork shots, one of a more out-zoomed look with his really cool flamethrower and him screaming, and of course a really close-in shot of him screaming, looking very crazy and cool. And of course he transforms in 26 steps. There's the barcode to scan to see his stats, and two product shots, one of the ant mode, one of the robot with the really cool flamethrower. And on the final side we do have the nice Legacy Decepticon artwork, and that is pretty much it for the packaging. So let's now get into the review. Here we have Inferno in his robot mode. Let's take a look at the details, starting at the very top with that head sculpt. Some really nice metallic blue for the main helmet section, with some really nice black for the bottom two tusks, some really nice silver for the bottom and top jaw of teeth, looking very cool with some nice red and the inside of the mouth, so we can do that really cool line where he typically screams, "Burn Maximals," which is a pretty crazy cool line. Of course the top two tusks done in silver. If you actually do look at the back of the head, there is some light piping, which is super cool. So if you get this figure in hand, shine this figure under a light and his eyes will illuminate. Super cool, very creepy and menacing. And of course his eyes are done in some really nice red clear plastic, looking very cool and very accurate to the Beast Wars show. So of course if you collected any of the Kingdom figures like the Predacons or the Maximals, they really went with more of a realistic approach. There was quite a bit of texturing, and they really got that approach with the Kingdom figures and put it with this one. As you can see, there's quite a bit of texturing on this figure. Going to the arm, of course, there's quite a bit of texturing on the insect legs, looking very creepy and realistic, very bony and scrawny. There's a really nice Predacon symbol at the shoulder with really nice spike done in red, with some really nice metallic silverish purple for this top section of the arm. At the fore, mostly done in red with a really creepy small little hand, looking very cool. Of course on this arm the exact same details minus the Predacon symbol. If we do go to the chest, they're really nice antis sticking out with this really nice transparent blue plastic with quite a bit of texturing around the eye. There's some spikes there looking very cool, and we do have the antennas, which you can maneuver to your own desire, which is a super cool feature. If we do move to the bottom part of the figure, we do have the back two longer legs, again very realistic and creepy, very bony, sticking out in the back, which you can maneuver these however you wish, which of course I will show during the articulation segment. If we do go to the legs and crotch, some really nice metallic purple and blue there, looking very cool with some nice red, and we do have some more of that metallic blue on the side of the leg. And I actually really do like how they actually have faux legs, faux ant legs on the legs. There is no purpose of using these at all, not a part of the transformation at all, and I'm perfectly fine with that. Typically I don't like them using faux pieces because I think they typically do get in the way of either the robot or the alt mode, but they do not get in the way of this figure at all, so I'm perfectly fine with them using these. I actually think it looks super cool. There's some more black for the toes and the heel spurs, which I think looks very cool. So definitely design wise they definitely nailed Inferno. And of course if we do move to the back, we have the classic signature thing of Inferno, his really huge kind of ant rocket booster butt thing, which is so crazy and so well detailed. Of course I will show the functionality of this during the articulation and accessory segment, but detail wise looking absolutely amazing. Tons of circuitry done in that really nice metallic blue, looking super cool, very awesome. Of course there is the texturing on the outside of it, which this really comes into play more in the ant mode, but just detail wise looking super cool. So I think they definitely nailed this Inferno, looking very crazy and cool. So articulation wise, a little bit hard to maneuver, but I think they did a much better job concealing all the kibble, of course meaning the ant legs and the whole ant rocket booster section. I think they did a better job concealing that, making it a little bit more neat and tidy than Waspinator, because that one can be kind of a hodgepodge mess. So articulation wise, I'll show you as best I can. I might actually have to straighten them up a little bit because things can get a little bit messed up during articulation. So of course you already can see his mouth can open and of course close. It can look up and down, tilt side to side, and of course move side to side as well as of course the antennas can move up and down. The arm can move out and in, and of course all the way around. So there is a swivel at the bicep, a double jointed elbow, and there's actually a really cool feature at the wrist. So there is rotation at the wrist, and there is actually a separate hinge for the insect legs. So you would probably think that the leg and the wrist would be the same articulation point, but it is actually a separate one, which is really nice. I'm really glad they did that. Of course, as for the articulation of the top one, is also on a hinge too, which is separate from the arm, so this can move on its own. Of course, articulation-wise, the exact same on the other arm. As for these bottom two, this is actually how it is in the instructions. They have these facing down, which you can actually have them facing up if you want to. This is typically how I will maneuver them. So there is a hinge at this section here, so this can move forward and back. And there's also a hinge at the separate leg as well. So you can kind of position this however you want. Of course, you will want to make sure these are out of the way of the whole rocket booster section, because you do not want them scraping against the legs, because it could chip some of the paint off. And let me just move these out of the way for now so I can show you the full articulation of the legs. So of course there is a full waist rotation. The leg can kick that far forward if we do move these antennas out of the way. And of course it can go that far out. There is a swivel, a knee bend. There is also an ankle pivot. And if you want to, you can actually tip the toe, but that is really due to transformation. And if you move the whole backpack section out of the way, it can kick that far back. So overall, very good articulation, a double jointed elbow. And again, I'm really glad how the leg articulation, the insect leg articulation is separate from the wrist, because they could have easily just made that one solid piece. And of course, moving on to the main attraction for articulation wise, which I can show you, is the whole back booster piece. So let me just straighten him up just a little bit. Again, he can get kind of messed up during articulation, so of course there is a hinge at every single one of these little pieces. So there's a hinge here, here, and here, and here. There is also a swivel at this bottom one, but that is really due to transformation. And there is also a main hinge at this entire section here, so this can move up and down, but again, really due to transformation. And of course there is an entire rotating section here, but that of course is the main gimmick for this figure. And speaking of course, gimmicks, he does have his accessories. So I will show you how it implements into this first, then I'll show how it looks like in his hand. So here is his one accessory, which I think they did an amazing job with this. Really nice gunmetal gray and really nice red transparent plastic, looking very accurate and looking definitely like a flamethrower. And what's really nice is there is 4 ports where you can plug 4 blaster pieces in there to have a really cool flame effect. So there is a peg and there is a port, and you can plug this right into place right there, so you can recreate that really crazy effect of him blasting off. And of course in the show, it rotated around whenever he was flying, which is just so crazy and nuts. And again, I want to advise caution, make sure these legs and pretty much all the insect legs are out of the way so they do not get caught or of course scrape these sections, because you do not want to chip the paint on this whole section. Not saying that it's prone to paint chipping, just saying it could happen. But there is the effect. I think that looks super cool and crazy. I'm really glad that was a feature in this. And of course, typically, probably I will store the blaster in his hand, so I'm going to show you that right now. Let me just straighten him up a little bit, because he can get a little bit messed up after doing the articulation. Just move these down. And again, his blaster, there is a peg and of course a port in the hands, and you can plug that into place and he can use his flamethrower and he can say burn Maximals, which is a pretty cool thing. Of course, we got to open his mouth so he can scream at the Maximals. So there is the accessory. Of course, really 2 ways to store in the hand and in the back. Typically I'm probably going to have it in hand, but that is just my opinion. Overall, an amazing looking robot mode. I think they did such a good job with this. Let's now get down to one quick Legacy Wave 3 comparison. So here he is with the other Voyager from this wave. Here he is with Armada Starscream. I think they look really good next to each other. Probably, I have to say, of the Voyagers so far, of course, we've only had 3 waves of Legacy. These are probably my favorites. They look so cool. Unfortunately, I do have to say, of course, his review is coming out very soon. I don't want to say too much, but his joints could be a little bit tighter, but just of the detail and, of course, their modes, these have to be my favorite Voyagers from Legacy so far. They're just such good Voyagers. They did an amazing job with them. Highly suggest to pick them up whenever you can, but they do look very cool next to each other. Of course, one is much more wild and crazy, the other much more simple design of Armada, but they do look very cool next to each other. I would have liked maybe if he had come with another accessory, because as you can see, Starscream does come with 2 swords. Yes, I really do like the flamethrower, but honestly, I think they could have thrown in a really cool custom, like, flame piece to attach to it, because I think that would have been such a cool thing. I know they typically do not include blaster pieces into Voyagers or Deluxes or Leaders. No, that's not very common, but I think that would have looked very good with the series. I think that would have really worked. I know some people think maybe blaster pieces are kind of boring. I think it really would have worked, but that is just my opinion. But that's pretty much it for this comparison. Let's now get down to some more Beast Wars Predacon comparisons. Now for one final group comparison, here we have all the Beast Wars Season 1 Predacons next to each other, and yes, Inferno was actually the last Predacon we needed to complete the entire Beast Wars Season 1 Predacon collection, which is so crazy. I actually did not realize that until I was getting the comparisons ready. I was getting all the Predacons for my display, because of course they're kind of spread out across my whole collection, and I just realized I have all of the entire bunch here, and it looks so cool. Of course, let's just go through them all, and then I'll let you know my favorites and my least favorite. And of course, since I'm going to let you guys know that, you need to let me know in the comment section down below what is your favorite Predacon from this collection. Of course, not the character, the actual figure here, and what is your least favorite. Let me know in the comment section down below. So of course we have Trenchless, Black Arachnia, Scorponok, Pterosaur, Waspinator, Megatron, and Inferno himself. If I were to pick my favorite, probably right now it would be Inferno. Of course, I did not include Dinobot in there because I really consider him to be a Maximal. That is just my opinion. Of course, he did start out as a Predacon, but most of the time in the show he was a Maximal. That is just my opinion. And my least favorite would probably have to be Pterosaur, unfortunately, which is funny enough. It's kind of ironic because as a character from the Beast Wars show, I always thought he was my favorite Predacon. As a figure, this one right here from the Kingdom Golden Disc Collection pack, he really did not live up to my expectations. His articulation isn't that good. There's a few weird design traits, and there's a lot of loose joints. The wings pop off all the time. Unfortunately, he just really didn't add up to my expectations. Appearance-wise, I think they nailed the Pterosaur look, but when you get into more of the figure, like moving around and posing him, you start finding some problems. So unfortunately, he is my least favorite. My favorite is Inferno. That is just my opinion. Let me know in the comment section down below what is your favorite, and I highly suggest, if Hasbro's listening, they probably aren't, but if they are, they should definitely make some more Predacons from future seasons, like Season 2 and 3. They should make maybe Quick Strike or Silverbolt. He was a Predacon for a little bit. They could make Death Charge, of course, he's not a Predacon, but they should definitely make some more Beast Wars characters because I think they're absolutely nailing them. Some of them are not as good as others, like Waspinator and Pterosaur. They're not amazing, but to have in the collection, I think it just looks awesome. The appearance of them, they're nailing. I think they just need to work maybe more on the kibble management. I think that was probably my main problem with Pterosaur and Waspinator. The kibble management wasn't that good, and the articulation and everything tabbing together. My main problem really with Waspinator is the loose joints. He had a lot of really loose joints. The connections just weren't that secure, and that was another major problem with Pterosaur. His wings would always pop off, but the appearance, they absolutely nailed. Definitely very accurate to the Beast Wars show, so they're doing a very good job. There's just a few figures here and there that they could improve a little bit better, but I would say the majority of these figures you see before you, I think they did an amazing job with. Let me know in the comment section down below again, which one's your favorite, which one's your least favorite. Let's now move on to transformation into the ant. Let's now get down to transformation into the ant mode. So what you're going to do is disconnect the entire ant head or chest piece right here. So there is a hook and there is a slot, and that's how that was tabbed into place. You can then split the ant head in half. You can then bring down the teeth or mandibles like that, and then open these up. And then the chin is going to go right into that slot right there. So just move this up, push the head in there. And then you're going to get both halves. These will collapse around the head. And of course there's tabs and slots, and that's how that was working, like that. And there we go. Sometimes a bit of a seam or crease there, but as you can see, I got lucky and it is fully aligned and there is no crease. And there we go. Let's now get down to the arms. So this is a bit of a finicky thing. You're going to want to make sure at all times the hand is aligned with the form like that, because it can kind of mess things up a little bit later. So you're going to use that double jointed elbow joints right there. Do the same, of course, on the other arm, like that. And you're going to use this swivel like that. Get the insect legs, those will go back like this, go back. And then what you're going to do is the thumb is going to go into those little squares there, and there is a tab and slot on this side and a tab and slot on this side, and of course those will tab together accordingly. So just hinge this in like that. Again, bring the insect legs back. You're going to have to do that quite a bit because they can get in the way. And be aware, whenever you move this bottom one, it can slightly misalign the hand, so you will have to adjust that. So let's just get in one side. I will try to show you as best I can. So I got one side in. Do the same thing on the other side. So use that hinge there. Get the insect leg, move that out. And this is just going to do the same thing on that as the other side. So just align the thumb into place like that. And there is, of course, tab and slot on each side that will align as well. So just tab that into place. There we go. And you're going to want to have it looking something like this. And then what you're going to want to do is rotate at the waist like this. You can then collapse the foot up like that. Do the same thing on the other side. And then you're going to get this whole hinge here, hinge the leg up like that. Do the same thing on the other side. And there is a peg on this side and a port on the other, just like that. And then you're going to get this entire waist section, hinge this down, and then hinge the legs up like that. And there we go. And you're going to move the insect legs down just to get out of the way or wherever is needed. And now we're going to move out on this whole back section. Let's just spread these out. Use this entire section, swivel this up. And then there's a peg here and here, and there's a port on the inside of these pieces. So this will just peg right into place, which can be a bit hard to align. You can try on this side. And I got one side. There we go. And then you just tab in the other. There we go. And then the last step is you just move this section in, and there's two tabs here, and there's two slots there, and you just tab all of this into place, just kind of compress it, and then what you're going to do is, of course, kind of spread the insect legs out so he can be flat on the surface you have him on. I do apologize, it was a little bit fiddly back there. Sometimes it's hard to align those pegs, so there's very little space to work with. And there we have Inferno in his really good looking ant mode. Let's take a look at the detail. Here we have Inferno in his ant mode. Let's take a look at the details, starting at the very front with the head of the ant. Of course, some really nice, smooth, glossy blue for the front mandibles, looking very cool. We actually have the antennas and several different ligaments with quite a bit of texturing, looking very realistic. Some really nice, glossy blue plastic there for the eyes, looking very cool and reflective. We also actually have quite a bit of spikes on the head itself with quite a bit of texturing down that really nice bright red. We actually have the mid-body of the ant with this really nice kind of mixture of red, black, and purple. I'm really glad how there's several different shades of red and almost purple on this, not just one solid red color. Actually makes it quite a bit more interesting and appealing to the eye. I'm really glad how they kind of mixed up a little bit. There's quite a bit of red on the side, so it kind of fades and changes color throughout, which is pretty cool. And if you do move to the back, if you look at the front shade of red at the head and the back, it's a little bit more faded and dark, kind of a mixture of red and grayish black. So I'm really glad how it's a bit of darker on the back or butt section of the ant. So that's pretty cool how they mixed it. It made it a little bit more interesting because they easily could have done just one solid coat of red for everything. So I'm really glad how they kind of made it a little bit more interesting. As for legs, of course, all done in black, but looking very creepy and cool, very bony. As you can see, several of them are angled in different ways with quite a bit of ligaments and sections and looking very realistic and creepy and cool and scrawny and bony. So they did a really good job at this realistic ant look. And if you do flip to the bottom, yes, there is quite a bit of cable visible. These are actually the legs back here, the arms, so not everything is completely covered, but from the side and top and front view, overall not looking too bad. Yes, I have heard people complain about some of the empty gaps you can see here and there, but from a faraway view, you can barely even tell there's any, kibble or gaps at all. I really wouldn't complain about it at all. It's perfectly fine by me. But let's now get down to articulation. So as for the head, unfortunately, there is no side-to-side movement. But of course, that is because this is actually the chest piece, so that would be pretty hard to include that engineering. Also, of course, this piece does split in half, so I really don't think that would have been possible. But it can move up and down slightly. Also, of course, the antennas can move up and down articulation, the mandibles can move out and in. As for the legs themselves, there is a hinge here in and out. There is a swivel here. Of course, same for the other two legs on the other side. There is a hinge here on the top of this leg right here, and there is a hinge here as well as the whole back section, which this is actually part of the waist. If you want it further up, you can, but you do have to move the legs, so you can do that if you want to. But of course, you kind of have to reposition the legs every so often to have all 6 on the ground. And that is pretty much it for the articulation. So another complaint that people have with this figure, besides the gaps, which really I don't consider a complaint of mine, is the storage for the accessories. So of course he has this flamethrower accessory. Most people, when they heard rumors about this figure, would assume it would store in the back, but unfortunately all that space is filled up by the legs, so there really is no place to store it. So you really just kind of store it on top. Personally, me, it does not bother me at all. Yes, would I have liked it to be able to store in the back? Yes, I would have. I would really like to do that, but it does not bother me at all that it stores on top. I think it looks pretty cool in my opinion. I know some people might think it looks pretty ridiculous. It does kind of seem like an afterthought storage, like, oh, okay, where are we going to put it? We really don't know. I think it looks okay. I'm really glad they didn't just say, oh, stick it underneath. I think that would have looked retarded and stupid. So honestly, of the many other options they could have done, I think this is probably the best. There probably could have been way worse options they could have done. They could have said, just stick it off to the side or something. So personally, again, me, doesn't bother me at all. Would I have liked it to be able to store back here? Yes, but honestly, would I have rather had more kibble sticking out and the accessory storing in there, or this, of course, with less kibble sticking out and just the accessory stored on top? Because you do have to be aware, for space to be out here, they would have to move all the legs out and put it somewhere else, so it could have looked worse appearance-wise. The ant could have not been as streamlined. There could have been much more kibble sticking out. So really, it's kind of, pick your poison situation. I think overall it looks very cool. Again, if you wanted to, you could plug some blasted pieces into the flamethrower to have a really cool flame effect. I actually think it looks very, very nice. And that is pretty much it for the ant mode. Let's now get into one quick Kingdom Predacon comparison. So here he is with Scorponok from Kingdom. I think it was Wave 3 if I'm correct. And they do look very, very cool next to each other. And again, I think all the Predacons they've made so far are pretty good. I don't think there's any that are bad that I wouldn't recommend. There's just a few that are better than others, but they do look very, very cool next to each other. So that's pretty much it for this mode. Let's now get down to the final thoughts of the Transformers Legacy Voyager class Wave 3. Let's now get down to the final thoughts for the Transformers Legacy Wave 3 Voyager class Predacon Inferno. Starting in the ant mode, overall looking super, super cool. Love how there's several different shades of red, because they could have easily done just a really boring same shade of red for the entire body of the ant, of course, besides the legs. So I'm really glad how there's a lighter shade, a darker shade, and of course the really nice and interesting mixture of purple, red, and black. I really do like that midsection. Also the legs looking very creepy, bony, and realistic. Really good. It did a really good job with that. Also the texturing all over the entire ant. Love that. Of course, they took that same kind of concept from Kingdom, where they're going for more realistic beast modes with quite a bit of texturing on them, so I'm really glad they kept that same concept and design trait with this one in Legacy, looking super cool in the ant mode, of course. There's been 2 complaints that I've heard quite a bit with this mode. The storage, which personally, with me, does not bother me at all. I know a lot of people would have preferred the weapon be stored in the entire back section of the ant, but unfortunately there really is just no place to store it, because all of the legs and all the kibble goes pretty much in that section there. So if the weapon were to be stored in there, the legs would probably be sticking out and it would have looked worse. So personally, if I were to choose having the accessory store on top, and have less kibble, or having this accessory store in there and more kibble, of course I would have chosen this one. That is just my opinion, and I think honestly this is probably the best outcome there could be, because any other way they probably would have stored it like under the butt section or in some weird place. Honestly, to me, it doesn't bother me at all. I understand people have their own opinions. I think it actually looks pretty cool with the flamethrower pointing forward, so he's an ant like a giant blaster on top. I think it looks pretty cool. Articulation is not that bad. That wasn't the main complaint. I'll get to the second one in just a second, but personally, I really would have liked if the head could have had some more articulation, but I do understand why, because that is actually the chest piece that does split in half due to transformation, so I think it would have been really hard to have the head split in half for transformation and rotate in this mode, so I think I completely understand why they couldn't do that. That just seems really hard from an engineering standpoint, so that's probably why. There's actually some articulation of the legs, so you can have him in some pretty cool poses. You could probably have him have some legs up like like he's about to run, put him in some pretty cool dynamic poses. There is actually a hinge in this entire back section, so you can have it further up or further down or more neutral like this one. So you can do some pretty cool poses with this. Actually, the mandibles can move and the antennas can move, which is pretty nice. So you can definitely have some fun with this ant. The second thing that I've heard people complain about for a lot from the side view is there's a bit of gaps here and there, but honestly, to me, again, does not bother me. People had problems with the weapon, doesn't bother me. With the gaps, there's a few here and there, but you do have to realize there will be some sacrifices because, of course, it turns into an ant. There's very few figures that can do that and pull off a figure this good and it actually works, you know. An ant is pretty hard, you know. Not an easy mode, not as easy as like a car or a truck or a plane. That's pretty easy to do. I think they got that down by now. So, personally, me, I am accepting it for what it is because I actually think it looks pretty cool. Yes, there's a few gaps here and there. Honestly, if I were to complain, you can actually see these swivel joints, the bicep swivel from the side. Probably that would be my main complaint because that does look a little bit ugly. You can see it passing by right there where I'm pointing. That would be probably what I would say is the most ugly. All you can see, you can also see the pin joints, the silver section there, so I would have liked maybe if they painted that or put a panel there, but again, not a deal breaker for me at all. Getting down to, of course, transformation both ways. Honestly, not that hard. I would say it's just a little bit fiddly with the back section. As you can see, I was having a little bit of trouble during transformation tabbing these sections on. There is a peg and there is a port. There's just very little room to do it because, of course, you also have the legs that have to be there. So that's just a little bit of a fiddly situation. I wouldn't say it's a hard transformation by any means. You could easily get it down, I would say, with the instructions probably 2 times, and after that you could probably easily get it down. Getting down to the robot mode, absolutely amazing looking head sculpt. You can just recreate that awesome scene when he yells, "Burn Maximals!" Very crazy and classic line. You can have him screaming because that character is just nuts. He's crazy. You know, he calls Megatron royalty, so he's lost it. So you can do some pretty cool fun poses. Of course, he has the entire rocket booster butt jetpack thing on his back, which is insane too. So you can actually plug the blaster into his back, which of course is actually formed from this entire section here. So you can recreate that, put a big blaster piece on there, so have him blasting away, which is pretty cool. Honestly, what would be pretty cool, I might actually consider maybe getting a second flamethrower piece like on eBay loose, so you can actually have him using his flamethrower in his hand and actually storing it on his back at the same time. So that would be pretty cool. I actually do think there is several episodes where he actually does have 2 flamethrowers, just realizing now. So honestly, I would have been fine if it came with 2, so you could actually have him wielding one and using the other on his back. I know they probably wouldn't ever do that because that does seem a bit excessive to some people, but I think that would be pretty cool in my opinion. So maybe I'll try and find like a 3D printed or a loose one on eBay sometime, and I might do a fun video with that if I ever get the chance to find one loose, but I think that would be pretty cool to see. Overall, pretty good articulation, just a crazy head sculpt, crazy designs. Of course, you do have to be aware there is a bit of kibble and junk. Of course, the insect legs are kind of everywhere. There's 2 on the arms. There is 2 on the back, which you can position up or down. And actually, by the book, they are positioned down towards the legs, which you actually can face them up. Taking this figure out of the packaging, and for me, they were positioned already up. So you can really have your fun with it. You can position them however you wish. And also be aware, of course, of the whole rocket booster section. That can sometimes get in the way, so you do have to be aware, be patient, because you do not want that to get caught with the insect legs. I did mention that earlier. There was times where I was messing with the figure and creating some poses. The insect legs can get caught in this whole booster section, so do not just try and turn something or move something when it's getting caught, because you could snap something off. I don't think that could happen, but you just have to be open to the possibility. Overall, good articulation again. Quite a bit of movement and options with the insect legs. The arms, pretty standard. There's actually a double jointed elbow, which is very useful. Also, I was worried that I was really worried about 2 things. Of course, the insect legs, I was worried it was going to be too kibbly like Waspinator. That was one of my main problems with Waspinator. The insect legs were kind of just sticking out everywhere. I don't think that at all with this one. I think they did a much better job with managing all the kibble. Another problem was I was worried it would be back heavy with the giant booster section, and I was worried it would fall back a lot. You would have to have him in a crazy position to actually have him standing. Not at all. I actually had him in some pretty neutral, flat poses, and he never fell down. The third one that I was slightly worried about is the hand joint wouldn't be strong enough to hold such a big weapon, because if you've seen the robot mode, his hands are very tiny and his arms are very scrawny. On my copy, the joints are very tight, so it's good he can actually hold up the weight of the giant blaster, so hopefully everyone's copy is that way. It's strong enough to hold up the blaster. So my main 3 concerns are actually perfectly fine. None of those actually happen, which is really good. So overall, a very solid figure that I highly suggest to get. And that's pretty much it for this review. Let me know what you think of this figure in the comment section and down below. Hope you enjoyed this review, and of course, stay tuned for some more content. I will be getting some more Wave 3 figures. Also, of course, I do have the PulseCon exclusive, and I actually did look recently. I'm supposed to be getting the last Wave 2 Shatterglass figure, the Soundwave one, around November 11th, I think. So that will be coming soon as well. So make sure to stay tuned for that. Lots of good content. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.